Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Tsitsi Audrey, and welcome to You Can Rise Again. So, today I am joined by an amazing young lady who I'm so excited to talk to today. I've been looking forward to this interview for a very long time. So, I'm so delighted to have with me Maud Chifamba, who is going to tell us her inspirational, powerful story. Maud, how are you today? And thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I'm doing well in this gloomy morning. Yes.
Gloomy weather,
Yeah.
yeah, tell me about it. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, I won't take too much of your time because I know you've got a very, very busy schedule. So I just wanted to know who is Maud? Who is Maud? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Just tell me a little brief history about who Maud is.
Okay. So I was born and raised in Zimbabwe.
Mhm.
I'm currently a second year MBA student at the Wharton School. I'm currently on exchange in London, which is why I always say I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. I did sometimes forget that when I'm like speaking to Zimbabweans, like, wait, what do you mean? Um, so I was born and raised I was born in Gokwe.
Mhm.
Um, Stayed there until I was 5, which is when I started school. Around second term for grade one. Actually, that was 6 until I was 6 when I then started school. Around second term, I then moved to stay in Handers Road, which are the resettlement areas between Kwekwe and Gweru, which is where I finished off my primary school
Mhm.
in Gweru, and then I then moved to Chegutu, which is where my family was then staying from around 2008, 2009, which is where I then did my O levels.
Mhm.
And then I went to the University of Zimbabwe, where I had my first degree in accounting. And then I did my master's as well with the University of Zimbabwe straight after my first degree. And then I did my articles at Deloitte, Zimbabwe, until I qualified as a chartered accountant. Then I did a bit of like remote work. Right before I left Zimbabwe, I was the chairperson of the Zimbabwe Youth Council, as well as sitting on the Port Trust Board, which regulates telecommunications in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
I am most known for going to university when I was 40. That's what most people know me through, I would say, basically, in a nutshell. That's me.
Okay. So basically this is where I wanted to go with this because you're not somebody who took like 20 years in primary school like some of us.
Oh my God, yeah.
That journey because this is how I got to know about you. I just
Yeah.
saw, I didn't look too much into it, when I started talking to you now because I didn't want to preempt. I also wanted to hear your journey for myself.
Mhm.
How was that like for you? Because I know you did not go to primary school for as long as some of us did, and university as well. I went to university when I was in my 50s.
Oh my God, that's
I'm not,
really
I'm not,
good,
I'm not,
actually.
I'm not 50, but like I'm saying that, I went to my university in my late teens.
Yeah.
But for you, life was a little bit different when it came to, the academic side of things. How was that for you? How did this come about?
Oh yeah. I started, primary school just like everyone else. I started ECD.
Mhm.
We used to go to Kindergarten creche, like that's
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
When I was 5, and then when I was 6, I started grade one, Chirai Primary School in Gokwe. Did my first term there, and then we moved to Andis Road.
Hmm.
Um, I Hannes Road was a shock for me because on the first day of school, I was going to the school called Conmara Prison School,
Hmm.
which is like the school for the Conmara Prison. Conmara Prison is like very, very famous. Um, on the first day, I saw that this distance is way too much. Like it was more than 8 kilometers from home. I
Hmm.
was like, "There's no way I'm doing this for 7 years. There is no way in hell. I'm gonna try to shorten this period as much as I can." So
Mhm.
I then did I when I got there, they were like, "Oh, what grade were you?" I was like, "Well, I'm grade two." And
Mhm.
at that time I was really, really tiny. I don't know where this body came from. Like at some point it just like boom, it just changed.
Mhm.
But before that, I was very tiny and the teacher couldn't believe I was grade two.
Mhm.
They put me in grade two. However, one of my brothers was learning in the school.
Mhm.
And I hadn't told him that I was gonna say I'm grade two. So when they asked him, like, wait, wherever this child was coming from, what grade was she in? He was like, well, she was in grade one. So back I went to grade one. Then the
Mhm.
following year, the villagers, because this was like a new resettlement areas, this is like it's not like the established Kumusha where everybody comes from, where there's like an established school
Mhm.
and like from, I don't know, like a legacy from before, because these are communities that I established. This was more of resettlement areas where like the new farmers, like and third Chimurenga vibes, the new farmers had taken over a farm from
Mhm.
the white farmer,
Mhm.
and the war veterans had kept the farmhouse. But then there was like there were like these pens where he used to keep his pigs, his poultry, his goats. And the villagers then figured out that why don't we turn this farmhouse into a school?
Mhm.
Because at that time, I was walking 8 kilometers to school, but I was not the child that stayed the furthest from school. There were people that stayed maybe 10 more kilometers from where I stayed who were going to the same school I was going to. So, although I was walking 8 kilometers, I was not the person that was walking the furthest distance. So,
Mhm.
they tried to find like something that was a bit more central. And
Okay.
they ended up turning this house or this compound into
Mhm.
a school.
Okay.
And then at the school, I it was like 6 kilometers from home, so it was a little bit closer. And then they didn't have enough children for number one, they didn't have enough children to be called a school. So we ended up getting only 3 teachers from the government. We didn't get 7 teachers like the normal school would. So we ended up having 3 teachers. And also we didn't have infrastructure anyway to support 7 classes or
Mhm.
enough students to actually support having like 7 different classes. So
Mhm.
grade one and two learned in one class, three, four, five learned in another class, six and seven were in like one classroom. The teacher would come teach grade two, give them work to do, and then go back teach grade ones, give them work to do. So I started at this school when I was grade two.
Mhm.
Then when I was grade three, I was in the same classroom with grade three, fours, and fives. So in my second year, I was given a paper for grade four. In my second term for grade three, I was given a paper for grade four.
Mhm.
And then that was a math paper, and I'm naturally good with numbers. So
Mhm.
I totalized the paper. So the next year, the next term, which was third term, grade three, instead of writing my exams with grade threes, I asked to write exams with grade fives. So then I was number one I was like the top student in grade five. So
Wow.
what that did for me was the next year, instead of going to grade four, I wanted to go to grade six. My teachers were like, no, school is not about just learning in class. It's also about like, the social aspects, being around your age mates and
Mhm.
learning things with people your age. I was like, no, because in that time, my little brother was going to come into grade three and I did not want to be in the same classroom with him. So, so I ended up convincing them, medicine and stuff, and then they ended up allowing me to go to grade six. Then I
Mhm.
wrote grade seven. I was given like the award for being grade being the best student under the most difficult circumstances. So I had 4 units because we were only writing 4 subjects.
Okay.
But then the following year, my family tried to get me into secondary school, which is like Form 1. I
Mhm.
went to we were still staying in Handels Road.
Mhm.
I went to Kwekwe, and I knew, so Handels Road to Kwekwe is probably like $1 or something. And I was commuting from Hunters Road to Quaker every day. And I knew there was no way in hell my family could afford to send me to school for 4 years.
Mhm.
Because at that time, we were struggling to have 3 meals a day.
Mhm.
We would go buy fish in Binga and come back and sell them on the Blaue Road,
Mhm.
salt them and sell them. And then like that business was not thriving. Was struggling, like the family was struggling. So I knew there was no way they would be able to afford to send me to school for 4 years. So when I got there, I was like, well, I'm gonna do my ordinary level in 2 years. So I got to this college that they had enrolled me in, and they asked me like, what form are you? And I said, look, I'm form two. They were like, okay, because it was like one of those, those colleges where it's like one or two teachers that started college and
Mm-hmm.
not like when we say college, people think private school,
Yeah, yeah,
fancy.
yeah, yeah.
It's not that. It's not. It's
Right.
like the colleges in town. Like if you know, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so they were like, okay, come through because all they cared about was the money. We're paying monthly, a month into school. My guardian at the time went to Bingo, couldn't come back, didn't come back for like 3 weeks. So I didn't have money to commute into town. Neither did I have money paid for school. At
Mm,
that time, we tried everything. Like I stayed with like teachers, like very different teachers. And then at the end of that month I was back home, no school anymore. Then I ended up deciding, you know what, school does not reside in buildings. School is I can teach, I can learn by myself.
mm,
Thankfully, there was a Bible at home. There was a new general mathematics book three. There was an integrated science book three. There was this book called Success in Commerce.
mm-hmm,
Um, and all these subjects were in English except, so I ended up deciding that I was going to write my form four after studying by myself.
mm-hmm.
My family was like, no, there's no way that's going to happen. But fortunately for me, that was the height of the economic meltdown. So by
Mm,
the time we went to register for that, like for me to try to register for Form 4, that money was not a lot anymore
mm-hmm,
because my family, because I think it was equivalent to like a loaf of bread for 5 subjects, like equivalent to like $1 because of hyperinflation and everything.
mm-hmm.
So I ended up sitting for 5 subjects, passed them, and then the following year I then went to Form 5. Now my family had moved to Chegutu, went to Form 5, ended up getting a scholarship for Form 5 and then another one for
Old
Form
are
6.
you at this point?
So I wrote my grade 7 when I was 10, my Form 4 when I was 11, and then at 12 I was now in Form 5. And
Okay.
then 13 I did my Form 6, and then 14 that's how I then went to university. It's a
Wow.
long story. I have tried to find ways to make it short, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always like I can't like skip some of the details. Um,
Exactly, exactly.
but yeah, that's how it ended up happening.
And that this is what makes your story powerful because you can't skip any stages because we want to hear all of it. How did this actually happen? Because
Yeah.
when you were 12 and in Form 6, I'm starting Form 1. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so at this point, so where are your parents at this point and siblings? What's happening with that side of things?
Um, so with with my family, it's so somehow nowadays I don't like talking about it. Before when I talked about my story, I used to
Mhm.
like lead with that, but
Yeah.
now I don't know. I feel like I've just grown past it. But
Okay.
so I was when I was born, my parents, my dad passed away when I was 5,
All right. Okay. Oh, I'm
and
so
then I was put into the care of my half brother, who
right.
was the one who moved to Handus Road,
Hmm,
and
hmm,
I stayed with him and his family
hmm.
um, all along until I went to university.
Right.
My mom ended up passing away in 2011, she passed away a month after I wrote my A-level exams.
Right.
So, so yeah, so that was my core family.
Hmm,
But then when I went to university at 14 and then 15,
hmm.
I got in quotes adopted by this lovely, lovely, lovely woman who I was
Okay.
now staying with in Harare.
Hmm,
So and also like my brother and his family became my parents,
hmm,
really.
hmm.
So you hear me referring to like my mom, either like the Harare lady or
Hmm,
like my new parents.
hmm,
So when I talk about my parenting, I still consider myself to be a well-parented child, although
yeah.
my biological parents are not
Hmm,
here.
hmm.
But yes, I think for the story, it's important to know that like my dad, passed away when I was 5, and then I got into like being taken care of by my half brother.
Mhm.
But my mom was still there, and then she passed away in 2011.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to understand because as a young child, you are growing up, um, and you're going through these stages of life. You're actually skipping some stages in
Mm-mm.
life. What's going on? What's going on in your mind when you're going through these processes? Mentally, emotionally, physically. What is going on there?
Emotionally, I would say a lot was going on emotionally and mentally. Um, so my parents did not have the best marriage. That's number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I was the only girl. I was born as the only girl
Mhm.
in rural Zimbabwe,
Mhm.
where it is still very much patriarchal. So
Mhm.
me and my brother used to fight a lot about how he would say, because he's only 2 years younger than me, and he
Mhm.
would mention how he is my father because that's our culture. Like
Yeah.
the guy is respected more than the girl.
Mhm.
So, and so for me, it was like I was born into this family with just boys,
Mhm.
and I'm the only girl. And the only example I'm having of a life of a girl is my mother,
Mhm.
whose life I'm like, I do not want. Like, ma'am, I'm sorry. Thank you for your sacrifices, but I don't want your life. Like, keep it.
Mhm.
I didn't want it. So for me, I knew the only way I was going to be respected was if I could prove that I could do whatever my brothers could do. So
Mhm.
that was number one. I always wanted to prove that I could do what my brothers could do better. That
Mhm.
was number one. And then number two, my family was really poor. Like there
Mhm.
is like staying in the rural areas, and then there's being poor for rural standards.
Mhm.
Like even in the village, you're poor.
Yeah. Even the poor know that you're poor.
Exactly. Like it's like, oh yeah, you stay in the rural areas, like no more being in the rural areas. And then there's like even in the rural areas, you're poor. Like you don't have Mombe, like I'm telling Mombe the Kurimi is not like you are actually known to be the poor, right?
Mhm.
And I really, really wanted to run away from poverty.
Mhm.
I wanted to run away from poverty for me and for my family,
Yeah.
for my siblings, because from my mother's side, I'm the firstborn.
Mhm.
So for all my little brothers, I wanted better for them. So I
Mhm.
wanted to prove that I could do better than my all my elder brothers. And number two, I wanted to prove that I wanted to improve the life that my mother was living and the life that my siblings were living.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I had been taught, my dad always told me that the only way I was going to change my life was through going to school.
Mhm.
So for me, school became that thing that would liberate me from falling into a child marriage or
Mhm.
into like because everyone around me after grade 7 everybody would get married, like all my friends from primary school got
Oh,
married
wow.
after grade 7.
Mhm.
Like they didn't really go into high school or form
Mhm.
1 form
Mhm.
2, but if anybody even like right now in my like among my cousins,
Mhm.
by the time they get to form 3, they're all like getting married to some guy or something because that's
Mhm.
the standard that they have.
Yeah.
But for me, I never aspired to
Mhm.
getting married that early because I could see my mother and I was like, no, I
Mhm.
don't want that.
Mhm.
So it was running away from that, and then it was also trying to change my family's life. And I knew if I would stay focused on going to school,
Mhm.
I could be able to do both those things. And
Mhm.
it became more like a religion for
Mhm.
me. And it sort of feeds into even the person that I am today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So during this time, you're going
Yeah.
through these stages of your life. Did you even used to play as a child? Like, did you even have time to to play? The raka rakas.
I- it's very funny how life evolves
Hmm.
because growing up, I was never the child that liked to be in people's houses to
Hmm.
visit.
Hmm.
I was always the child that was at home, and even my parents, whether my biological ones or my pseudo ones, knew that
Mm-hmm.
I was the child that wanted to stay at home. But somehow it changed somewhere. Because now, if you're like on my Instagram, I'm always outside. Like I'm
Yeah.
always, it feels like I was inside and now I'm like making up for
Yeah,
it.
you're making up for
If you could say, because growing up, I was never the extro. My brother was the extrovert. Like he would always
Mhm.
be at people's houses. Like he was never home. He was always at
Yeah.
people's houses. I was the child that you could count on that if you go home now, you will find her at home. I was always the child at home. And people who would play with me knew that they would come to me. Like I didn't go to their houses. They would come to our house.
Mhm.
But I think I I was more into like going to school than I was into like playing out and doing all of that. Because I remember when I was then Form 5,
Mhm.
now I was 12.
Mhm.
And 12-year-olds are doing whatever it is that they are doing. And I was already in Form 5. But I remember getting a doll, like those 50 cents dolls, and I would be knitting clothes for my little doll while I'm going to Form 5. I think that's I think that's when it started like to catch up to say, wait, you skip the stage, you're still gonna have
Exactly.
to do it.
Yeah.
You're still gonna have
Oh.
to do it. So when I was Form 5, I was doing that.
Mhm.
Thank God for my classmates who totally entertained me um, doing that. And when I was Form 5 and Form 6, because Form 6, I ended up going to a boarding school.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then when I was in a boarding school, I would go and play with the Form 2s
Mhm.
instead of like staying with the A levels that I was learning with.
Mhm. Mhm. So
Yeah.
you also, you try to find ways to compensate, and you could recognize that, okay, these guys, they are way older than me. I need to go and play with my
Yes, yes, yes,
Ah,
yes, yes,
okay.
yes, yes.
That's really good. Okay, so you went to Form 6. Then what happened after that? You're 13 in Form 6?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Then university.
Yes, yes, yes. So after Form 6, um, I'm trying to say, so I finished off my schooling and I went back home because I finished off school at Sandringham High School,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went home to wait for results. And after results came, went to university to sort of start to apply.
Mm-hmm.
My first interaction at the university was there was a so the system was configured. You know how um things are configured to run a certain way. So I think the system at the University of Zimbabwe was configured to accept people from like 18 years old.
Right.
Like that's the normal
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
university going age in Zimbabwe is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
19.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that when I went there, they couldn't capture my application into the system because the system would reject my application and say that the date of birth that they were entering was too high
Yeah.
because because they'd never seen
A minor.
they'd never seen something like that, right? And I remember this lady looking at me and saying like, "Batete mbwenda munokura," or something like that.
Mm. Okay.
Um, and people I legitimately thought that I was not going to go to university, and they said go back, come back after a couple years and apply and just start university. But thank God, while I was at home, I remember Newsday came and they wrote my story, and then the next thing the university was calling me, like, because then the vice chancellor of the university had come to know about my case and was very interested in getting to meet me and getting to know me and offering me a place and offering me like you can do whatever degree you want to do because she thought I was still very young and I
Mm-hmm.
would be able to I would be able to start whatever field I was really interested in, not necessarily the commercials that I had studied, or still I
Mm-hmm.
chose accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started university in August of 2012. I was the first person in my family to actually go to university.
Mm-hmm.
So my family had never experienced it. It was such a novel experience for me. It was a novel experience for my family. And I remember, oh, because I was so young, but at
Mm-hmm.
this time, yeah, I was still not, I was visibly young and visibly
Mm-hmm.
younger than everyone who was there.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I was a zoo animal because everybody wanted to come see me, like, oh, hey, there's a 13-year-old, there's a 14-year-old, there's a 14-year-old uh who is in class with us. I remember at orientation, the dean brought me up and said, "Oh, we have someone that's starting with you guys. She's very special," and all of that. So I was a zoo animal for a couple of years when I was at university, which I am actually very grateful for because it gave me privileges that a lot of people didn't have. And
Mm-hmm.
also it helped to curate my experience because I was young. I was 14 and university comes with a lot of freedom,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which I don't think I would have been ready for to be given all of that at once. Being a
Mm-hmm.
zoo animal meant I was being watched all the time. I remember even if I wore a skirt that people thought was indecent,
Mm-hmm.
I would get a call from the vice chancellor like, "Hey, I hear you're walking around campus naked today. Can I just have a
All the
day?"
time.
Yeah, but that protection was good because it allowed me to, it was a good dosage of like, freedom. I still was able to do a lot of things that I wanted to do,
Mhm,
but I was also still very protected within the confines of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
mhm,
And I think the University of Zimbabwe did a very good job in making, because I also then did my master's at the UZ and they allowed me to even stay in undergrad accommodation because
okay.
when I was doing my master's, I started my master's when I was 18. So they allowed me to live with the undergrads because the undergrads were actually younger than I was
Mhm,
anyway.
mhm,
They were actually older than I was
mhm,
anyway, so they allowed me to to stay with the undergrads and gave me that freedom in bits and pieces. It wasn't like, oh, it was like, oh, you're not at university, you're not a big girl, go do whatever you want to do. No, it was like in small doses. And I think that was really, really important in just shaping who I was and helping me figure out my space, but within like the protection of like people still watching and protecting
mhm.
me.
Okay. All right. So in terms of the fame and the publicity and all this, what did that do for you? Because now you are all over, you're all over the media. People are talking about you. Like you mentioned that you became like a zoo animal. Everyone wants to come and see, look, come and see this
Yeah,
person. What did that do for you? Because I understand that sometimes when people receive this recognition, the fame, the publicity, some people, they just become different people. They don't want to talk to other people. They just become, crazy. But for you, how was it for you?
so the thing is, I have been a zoo animal my entire life. It's just that like, it was a bigger scale.
Yeah.
It was just on a bigger scale at UZ. But even at Sandringham, I was like younger than everyone.
Mhm, mhm,
When I was going to like stay with the form twos in their dorms, I was still younger than like everyone in the school.
mhm,
What it did for me is first off, I think I'm a people pleaser
mhm,
and being famous, as we might say
mhm,
gives a lot of people access to you. Like a lot of people want to talk to you. And
mhm,
I'm a people pleaser. I want everyone to be able to speak to me and think I'm a decent individual.
mhm,
But what that does is it spreads me thin across a lot of people
mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm trying to make you feel special, like we're friends, and I'm trying to make 100 people think that we're friends and I'm a good person. So what that ends up doing is I end up with a lot of colleagues and not
Mhm,
necessarily eh, deep friendships
mhm,
because I have a lot of colleagues, a lot of people that know me that I know, but
mhm,
that those connections don't get to be deeper
mhm,
because I'm spreading myself thin across a different spectrum of people, which
mhm,
is really funny because I also really felt like an island,
mhm,
like I was a person that could not fit into many spaces because my age mates were going through something that was totally different than what I was going through because number one, my age mate, my age mates, the people that I grew up with were already like having babies and stuff. That's a
mhm,
different thing. And then
mhm,
the people that were actually my age in the communities that I was now finding myself in,
mhm,
um, were like from two. I
mhm,
was at university. At the
mhm,
same time, the people I'm learning with at university are like 18. So it's
mhm,
like there is no real community that
Yeah.
you get to fit into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was incredibly hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that there is something that we actually don't talk about. Like I think for most families, they wealth goes through generations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So your father is a soldier. Bakapera perform to he takes you to school. You go kushika form 4, so it's
Mm-hmm.
generational. Then iwo wakurira community yavanhu vakaenda vakasvika kuform 4, you
Mm-hmm.
go kuform 6, and then your children grow up from there voenda kuform kuuniversity. So it's like generational, like increments in like small doses, and you get like you are like within those communities.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was a from Z to A kind of
Mm-hmm.
elevation, if we might say, to say I grew up in uh, a community or in a family that was in rural Zimbabwe, like Kumusha.
Mm-hmm.
Tichichika sadza nemunyemba usina mafuta. Like
Mm-hmm.
I lived that life. Tichichika sadza neshuga kana kuti sadza nesalt,
Mm-hmm.
right? Kana kuti munokanga nzungu, moisa salt, modya nesadza, like that is a meal, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm finding myself going to Santorini for vacation, but I'm just a generation away from this family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you are still, my aunties, my uncles, my cousins still live this life.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not in a position where you're like, do I live? Because now the reason why I'm going to Santorini is probably now because now my friends, I now live in a community of people that go to Santorini for vacation. I now live in a community of people that say, let's go to dinner, and you go to dinner and you spend, I don't know how many, however many pounds, 60 pounds, 50 pounds, like this London life.
Mm-hmm.
You're spending so much time. You're spending 15, 18 pounds on a cocktail, and someone's like, yeah, this is a really cheap bar. Like, I know a cheap bar that's like 18 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And at the back of your mind, you still have, if I send my aunt this 18 pounds,
Yeah. Yeah.
she will praise Jesus forever. Like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, man. Now, so you see, like, it makes, I think it makes for a very confusing life,
Mm-hmm.
because if it's gradual, you know how to be, you know how to behave, because most likely for that person who is buying an $18 cocktail, they grew up going to buy those cocktails and stuff, and they don't have that much of a family burden that's coming from Z to A. So that makes for a very confusing life in like how then do you balance being able to get the blessings you have and enjoy those blessings that you've already had? And how then do you also fulfill a purpose? Because I also think I believe in the words that Esther said, that Mordecai said to Esther, that says, what if you were made queen just for a time like this? When Esther was forgetting that she was Jewish and
Mm-hmm.
now doing whatever queendom things she was doing in the palace. Christians will know the story, like Esther and Mordecai was trying to say, Esther, you need to do this because what if you were made queen for a time like this? So it makes a very confusing life, and most of the time, I just tell myself to breathe and live today and make a decision for today,
Yeah.
whatever that is, and be fine with it. But I think we don't talk about it enough,
Mm-hmm.
of lives that go from Z to A within a single generation.
Yeah, it's quite a huge leap, isn't it? Like
Yeah, it is.
going from A to Z. It's like what happened to B, C,
What
D, and
happened?
like
Yeah, and
what happened
it's
there?
exactly. I feel like it's easier if it's like you're coming from Z, you get to Y, and then you die at Y, and then your children take it from Y and take it back.
Yeah.
And like it's easier when you're like away like this, when you're in the UK or in the US and you're away from home. But when you actually go home, when you visit home, that's
Mhm.
when you actually realize the move you've made in terms of like economic standing.
Mhm.
And I always find it very grounding. It puts a lot of things back into perspective, and it makes me feel so much gratitude.
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
God, because it's like a person like me does not deserve to be in the spaces that I find myself in, just looking at, making, let's say my cousin's a prototype of this is how I should have turned out, and
Mm.
then this is how I actually then turned out.
Mm.
It makes me very, very grateful, but
That's
also very confused.
That's amazing. So, I mean, so what with this journey that you have walked, what message do you have for that young lady who is still living in the rural areas, who is experiencing poverty, or somebody who's just feeling so discouraged about their life? What message do you have to give them? After everything that you've experienced, like you said, you went from A to Z. What message do you have for that young lady who's still living in poverty, who's still struggling with their life, and they see no hope, really?
Um, I say two things.
Mhm.
Um, the first thing that I would say would be I have problems with people that try to paint me as like a superhuman.
Mhm.
Trust me, I am as normal as
Mhm.
anyone is. And I say that to just point out the fact that if it can happen for me, it can happen for you too. Like there is nothing superhuman about me.
Mhm.
I had uh, an upbringing that sh made me revere my education, and up to today. I know in Zimbabwe sometimes when we look at people graduating at university and everything that's going on, it's very easy to sort of point the trap of like school doesn't pay anymore, school is old-fashioned.
Mhm.
But trust me, for people who are in poverty, trying to move from Z to M, I'm not even at A, like I'm probably at a P or something there.
Mhm.
Um, the I think one of the most guaranteed ways is going to school. Like that's one of the most guaranteed ways
Mhm.
to climb up that ladder.
Mhm.
If you can go to school. But
Mhm.
again, um, zvipo hazvifanani. Mine was probably kuenda kuchikoro,
Mhm.
figure out what yours is, but it is really possible. Don't ever discount that you're a girl. Don't ever discount that you're born in a poor family. Don't ever discount it based on like I don't know a lot of things that we as humans we're very quick to find reason to discount ourselves.
Mhm.
Don't ever discount yourself based on anything. Just know that it's possible. If you apply your mind to it, it's possible. The world is a way of rewarding people that are determined and stay the course.
Mhm.
Uh, if I had given up probably when I was like grade seven, I would be like, okay, it's done. Then it would have never been done. But if you stay the course, there is a way the world has of rewarding that. Then second thing is you cannot do it alone.
Mhm.
I'm a firstborn from my mom's side, and the thing is like I was raised with boys. So what that means is I have a big ego. Like
Mhm.
I struggle to ask for help.
Mhm.
But when I look back,
Mhm.
I see that God had a way of putting these specific little stars along the road when it was like almost at like this is the end of the road. When it was almost like, oh, I'm no longer going to Form 5 because my family couldn't pay fees. Was
Mhm.
a guy who was like, wait, my story was written in the Herald. Can we write yours? Can they write yours? And reaching out to that Herald and getting my story written. It was someone saying, come to present a speech, and from that speech, getting a scholarship. It was random strangers calling me, like, hey, do you want to come do your articles? And I had no idea what a chartered accountant was because I was never raised in a family. Like, even up to now, when I try to explain to my family what I do, like, even like when I'm in school, like, oh, I'm in investment banking, I just say, yeah, they just say "Kurse kubasa," like they don't even understand what I do, and and I have no way of explaining it to them, like what exactly is it that I do,
Mhm.
because I was not raised in a community that has that context.
Yeah.
But I had to take a lot of people hand holding, explaining things, showing me better ways, showing
Mhm.
me better ways to do things, and I think that's one thing that I would highlight that I didn't do it alone. It
Mm,
has been
mhm,
a result of so many people doing chidika, and like
mhm,
then all of it weaving into this
mhm,
story. So do not be hesitant to ask for help.
mhm,
Yeah, so know that it can be done, but
mhm.
do not think that you can do it alone.
Yes, amen.
Yeah.
I like the way I like what you said about Jipoa Fanani.
Yeah.
I think people have to understand. I'm talking to that young lady in the village, in the rural areas who is struggling, or even people who are not in the rural areas, because people have different struggles in
Yeah.
life. I
Hmm.
think just understanding that, we were all give different gifts, different talents, and the Word of God tells us that a man's gift opens doors
So
for.
for him.
Yeah,
Yes.
and set him before great men. If we
Yes.
have that understanding that God has put something inside of us, for you, it was, in academics, for somebody, it's in singing, for somebody else, it's in, doing things with their hands and things like that. And focusing on that, we will understand, we will get to know that there is always room for us
Hmm.
in this world, really, because God has put something inside of us. So I'm really happy that you highlighted that it's not about Maud going to school, because sometimes people may think that, I have to be as intelligent as Maud, but it's not that. You've got something else that is inside of you. It's about you being determined to say, I need to pursue this. I feel this. I feel that I'm very good with my hands and I need to pursue. And like you mentioned, that you can never make it alone. No man
Yeah.
makes an island. We need,
Yeah.
all of us as we grow, we've always had to have some help somewhere, somehow. Yeah. So I think that was a really powerful statement there that you made. And yeah, so
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for sharing. I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to listen to this and say, you know what, this is it. I don't have to be intelligent in school, but there is something inside of me that I can actually use. You know what, when God said to Moses, what do you have in your hand? What do you
Hmm.
what you have that you can use? You can use that lithium that you have that God has given you. So thank you
Hmm.
so much for sharing that. So my last question, then I will let you go, so
Yeah.
that you meetings and what. Yeah. What does Maud do for fun? Do you even get some quiet time to yourself?
You don't want to know.
And this is what I want to know, because it seems like every single time that I try to talk to you, you are busy, you've got meetings, so I want to know, what does Maud do just to, to hide from everything else, that's going on around you.
For me, I do have a lot of fun. Like, let me tell you, let me just be honest. For
Yeah.
me, one of the big things is recognizing what season you are in.
Hmm, hmm.
So I deal with my life in seasons,
Yeah, yeah.
and it makes it very easy for me to go through things because even if it's like a season of hard work, I
Hmm,
know there's gonna be a season of fun straight after this. So I have a way of structuring my life in seasons. So for example, in June to August, I was working in investment banking in New York, and you couldn't find me even if you wanted to. Like you couldn't find me anywhere.
hmm.
And then I went home. Even if you had work, you could never find me with work because that was downtime. I was at home. I
Yeah,
was with my family. So my life goes around in seasons. And for fun, what I do, I like traveling a
hmm.
lot. This year is my traveling year. I've been to like 10 different countries.
Wow. Wow.
So, so I like traveling. So most of my downtime, I I use it to discover the world,
Mhm,
figure out what is happening. I'm an extrovert. When I have downtime,
mhm,
you never find me in the house. Like you will never find me in the house. That's
mhm,
why I was saying earlier, like I used to be the person that never left the house. Now you will never find me in the
mhm.
house. Even when I have to do serious things like meetings, I prefer to take them outside somewhere. Let's have tea, let's have a drink, let's have coffee. Let's not be in the house. So I do like traveling a lot.
Mhm.
And now I also try a lot to just hang out with my friends because sometimes work becomes too hectic and I use whatever time I have to just catch up with like family and friends.
So would you say that you now have, friends that you call like, these are really like,
Yes, I
friends,
do. I do. I
same
do.
age? Oh,
I do. They're not. They're
okay.
not my age. Most of them are not my age because I ended up going to school with people that are 5 years older than me.
Okay.
And that's been the stream that I've been like in school and working with. So most of them are not my age. Although now with business school, I'm also making like friends that are also like my age because business school tries to bring like people that have been doing like a lot of, things around. And most people that look into business school are, 26, 27, up to like 30. Yeah. After that, people are like, no, I don't want to go to school. So
Mhm.
now I'm also like making friends that are my age, which is kind of very weird for me. But but yeah, I do
The
have
life
friends.
has been weird since when you were young. It's like different, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
very
it's like I've always been the youngest in class. What's happening? Why am I no more age?
exactly.
Yeah, but it's good.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Maud, for making time for this. It was so wonderful just to hear your journey. I have always wanted, to be honest with you, I have been wanting to hear your story for a very long time, for many, many.
Oh, thank you. It's been a story of God's grace, and I'm happy to share it because it's just showcasing the goodness of God and the blessings that follow me. And I do think that um. one time I went to South Korea in May,
Mhm,
um, and over there it was a school trip, right?
mhm,
And I remember there was a conversation about like some of the people that were in that trip with us, and they were like billionaires' daughters. And I was like, but God, if you really wanted me to be hanging around in spaces like this,
mhm,
why did you get me to be born where I was born? Why? Why wasn't I just like one of them from
mhm,
the beginning?
mhm,
And then I realized when I was praying about it, because it was like a person, I was like really mad.
mhm,
It was if I was born in a different circumstances, then I would in different circumstances, then I wouldn't have the experiences that I have had, and I wouldn't have the priorities that I do.
mhm,
So I'm grateful for all of it, and I'm happy to share it because I think it's my God's message to the world.
exactly. And it's all for
Yeah,
the glory of God, you
it
know.
is.
Yeah,
It
exactly. Look at
is.
where you are now. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you so much
time.
for having
I will
me.
let you go now. Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, okay?
Bye. You too. Thanks.
Well, that's all we've got for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, just hit the subscribe button and the notification bell for future content and future episodes. And you can also catch us on Facebook or Instagram at You Can Rise Again. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you can rise again. Until the next time, bye.